It's the Revved Up 906 podcast, a Detroit Pistons podcast, to be exact. And I'm Hudson.
I'm Ryan.
And before we get into episode number 44, a quick housekeeping things. First of all, make sure to like and subscribe. We as a podcast are growing and we want to continue to grow, and that's where you guys come in. So make sure to smash that like and subscribe button so the Revved Up 906 boys can make a big splash and impact in the Detroit Pistons community. Also, shout out Grind Clothing Co. because we have officially partnered up with them as our merch sponsor. You can find hats like the one Ryan is wearing today. You can find stickers, bucket hats, sweatshirts, all of the above. So much to choose from. So make sure to hit the link in our YouTube bio and in the video description below because you can get a quick forward to their website. And we've been getting some orders as of recent, so that's great to see. And we would love for you guys to rep your favorite Detroit Pistons podcast. Also, we got a good topic for you this week. So as we go, we're going to be commenting on so many different things. Make sure to comment below along with us if you agree with what we're saying, if you maybe see it a different way. We would love to see what you guys have to say because, yeah, we might be talking in front of the camera, but your guys' opinions matter too, and we'd love to see what you guys have to say. So make sure to comment below as you watch this video. You can pause, timestamp it, go down, comment a little bit of what we had to say, and then resume the video and say what you have to say also along with us. Without further ado, episode number 44 this week. And maybe the next couple weeks, we are going to be answering some of the biggest questions that the Pistons organization has right now. And this week, we are going to cover, can the Pistons lean on depth to help cover up their youth issues? So can the bench help out when the youth of this team is inconsistent? Because we saw last year, having one of the youngest teams in the NBA, that these young teams can struggle from time to time. We brought in a couple new veteran additions, but to kind of, for the sake of attempting to break down this topic, we are going to assume that our starting five is Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, Bojan Bogdanovic, James Wiseman, and Jalen Duren. So we will not really be covering those guys a whole lot today. We really want to talk about the bench presence that is going to help chemistry and help build up our starting five. So we have a bunch of key bench players this year, guys like Monte Morris, Alec Burks, Killian Hayes, Marvin Bagley, possibly Isaiah Stewart too coming off the bench. But I want to highlight Joe Harris to start because he's one of these veteran guys that is going to be kind of a question mark for our team if he's going to be able to produce. Last season, we saw him average nearly 8 points, nearly 3 rebounds, 1-ish assists. But a guy like Joe Harris is going to be a key player for us because Asar isn't going to offer that three-point shot. And Bojan can be streaky at times from the three-point line. It'll be crucial for a guy like Joe Harris to come off the bench and supply that three-point shot.
Yeah, it's something that Joe Harris has been good at thus far in his career is just being one of those catch-and-shoot type guys.
Yeah.
And that's what we need him to be here in Detroit. He doesn't need to be anything special. He can just be himself. That's what he's excelled at. Every single place he's been between Cleveland, Brooklyn, and now us in Detroit. I mean, he hasn't suited up for us yet, but if he does what he did in Cleveland, does what he did in Brooklyn, we'll be just fine. And he's just one of those guys that you can never have too many shooters on a good team. You really can't. Like, you look at the Miami Heat, I mean, when they had Ray Allen and the Heatles and everything, like, outside of Ray Allen, they had shooters. They had guys that can hit that shot.
Yep.
Every team in NBA history has had a shooter to win them a championship, and that's what we need. Who cares if we have Bojan, Joe Harris, Monte Morris, etc. Like, who cares if we have a log jam of shooters? It's nice to have. You can't complain about it. They do their job night in and night out, and that's that.
To kind of flip the coin a little bit and talk about the Pistons' big man situation, I really do think our bench will be able to kind of help out our starters because we know that James Wiseman and Jalen Duren are going to have their struggles here and there. We saw it in Summer League at the end of the last season. It's going to take a little bit to build that chemistry, and they'll have time to build that chemistry because of having Marvin Bagley and Isaiah Stewart coming off the bench. We know Isaiah Stewart is a starting caliber player. He very well might start on this team. It's hard to say. That's another one of those question marks. But Isaiah Stewart coming off the bench, he's going to be able to help out our two starting big men when they're inconsistent.
Yeah, I think Isaiah Stewart is going to be one of those guys in which he could be in the starting lineup one night, he could be on the bench the next. I don't think there's a clear-cut spot for him because I think he could easily start on our team, and I think he could easily come off the bench. It's just all up to Monty in that situation. And you look back what Monty has done with his big play, like with the Phoenix Suns in his first year with the team, they had guys like Frank Kaminsky. We all know this name, Aaron Baines. He was terrible for us. But Aaron Baines, you could throw Cam Johnson in there. You could throw Kelly Oubre kind of in that mold, but he's more of a wing. DeAndre Ayton and Dario Saric. Like, he had a lot of bigs and still played a lot of bigs. That's kind of his bread and butter, his big play. And from his first season up to the second season in Phoenix, when you look at the Suns' run in the playoffs in his first year to make the finals, still had guys like Frank Kaminsky getting a lot of minutes, Dario Saric getting a lot of minutes, Cam Johnson, DeAndre Ayton, Jay Crowder. He loves his big play. He oftentimes than not plays more bigs than guards. And so with Isaiah Stewart being one of those middle of the pack kind of players, and could you throw him in the starting lineup? Could you have him on the bench? I think that's the perfect situation. He kind of fits the mold of Cam Johnson, in which Cam Johnson, he could start any given night, but he could also come off the bench. And so it's kind of like Isaiah Stewart's kind of like that rover for us. Like, he could split one night and come off the bench the next, and he'd be fine. And that's what I'm kind of looking for in him.
Well, and Marvin Bagley and Isaiah Stewart can play alongside each other a lot easier than James Wiseman and Jalen Duren, just because they have very different roles on the offensive end and defensive end, Marvin and Stewart. So they're not going to really bang bodies in the paint too often, or there's not going to be that congestion in the paint. But a lot of people are wondering and questioning Marvin Bagley's future with the Pistons, maybe getting packaged in a trade deal with maybe like a Bojan Bogdanovic. We don't really know what Weaver is thinking right now, but I think there's a case to keep Bagley, because if you're going to have two young big men like James and Jalen in the starting lineup going through those growing pains, you're going to want to have that backup coming off the bench. And Marvin Bagley, I was impressed with him a lot of the time last season. He gave the Pistons that three-point shooting when needed, and then the offensive repertoire in the paint was very solid. We saw him average 12 points off the bench and nearly 7 rebounds per game. Off the bench, that's really valuable. And Marvin Bagley dealing with injuries here and there last season, but he showed that he can be a consistent player off the bench in today's NBA.
Yeah, you look at how old he is still. He's sitting at 24 years old. He's been in the league for a hot second now. And the fact that he's still only 24, 25-ish, like, why not keep him? I know, obviously, he's down in the sense of he hasn't played a whole lot due to injury. And when he has played, he hasn't been spectacular, but he hasn't been terrible.
Yeah.
He's just one of those guys in which it's kind of like he needs a second opportunity. And I think Monty might give that to him, because what Marvin can do for us from time to time is one night we may need him to get rebounds and that's it. And he does that. Or one night we need him to score and he does it.
Yeah.
He's just, he knows how to work his tail off. And with the Kings, he never got that opportunity. The Kings, they kind of put the spotlight on him and was out going like, hey, just show up and play. We don't care what you do. But now that he has a specific role with the Pistons, from this past season even, you can see that he's a much mature player, more than ever, and then he's willing to do whatever it takes to play in the NBA.
Yeah.
Like, he's fine being on the bench. He's fine having a less of a role and still contributing to the team. And so when you have a guy like him and what he brings, yeah, it can be easy to trade him away, but at the same time, it's kind of like you want to keep those guys. You want to keep those hard workers. Like, there's a reason why we kept Rodney McGruder for so long.
Yeah.
Because he's just one of those hardworking guys that puts his head down and goes to work. And if Marvin Bagley can accept that kind of role and be fine, not getting a lot of minutes and coming off the bench, pretty much riding it, like, who's to say he couldn't stay with the roster? Like the Suns, Jock Landale last year. That's kind of like what Marvin Bagley is like for us right now.
The thing with Marvin Bagley is his defense isn't quite good enough to like guard that starting level player, but he's the kind of guy that might like coming off the bench just because he doesn't need to like have that much responsibility. He can just come in and give that push of offense coming off the bench and then get rebounds here and there, because he's a guy that will give you a huge boost and have these big time dunks, these awesome post moves that gets the bench going and that kind of gives a surge of energy to the Pistons. But we've seen him fall short defensively. That's another reason why Stewart and Bagley off the bench will complement each other well, because Stewart at times will make up for Bagley's inefficiency at the defensive end, because Isaiah Stewart shows that his feet are always shuffling on the defensive end. He can go back and forth and do those switches on screens on the defensive side. So I really like our pairings of our two big men at the starting position and the bench position, because both pairs or duos complement each other in different ways. And sometimes when you have mismatches and it's hard to predict who's going to have a good night, and sometimes I could see our bench duo playing better than our starting duo. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just sometimes you want to throw guys into the fire or throw them into the deep end of the pool and see if they sink or swim. And I think that's what we're kind of doing with James Wiseman. We're pretty sure Jalen Duren's going to be that guy. We know that he's going to be that all-star caliber player. But is James Wiseman the guy that can accompany him at the power forward position? Time will tell.
Yeah. And honestly, you go back to our big discussion here. It's not, and you mentioned this, it's not bad to have a company of good bigs. Like, that's not a bad thing.
No.
Like, our one complaint after our recaps last year was we are lacking big depth. We don't have anybody there. At that time, outside of Bagley, Stewart, and Duren, we didn't have anybody. And so now that we have Wiseman in there, and Wiseman's shown multiple flashes here and there that he can be special for us, I'm not sitting here going like, let's get rid of Bagley. Like, I'm not sitting here going like that. And honestly, I'm not sitting here saying we need to get rid of Stewart. Obviously, I'm a Wiseman fan and a Duren fan, so I don't want them shipped off anytime soon.
No.
But, like, obviously, you look at Duren and Wiseman, it's kind of more of, like, defensively than Marvin Bagley and Stewart. Stewart has become more of, it's kind of weird to say, but more of like a 3-and-D big. That's what kind of he was for us this past year. So, honestly, like, having, like, Stewart and Bagley in offensively for us, having an offensive lineup, obviously you want them in there. But defensively, you're going to want Duren and Wiseman in the lineup. It's just one of those nice little valuable assets to have.
Make sure to comment below what your thoughts are on Bagley and Isaiah Stewart coming off the bench, and if they are going to be able to give that force, that surge, in case Jalen Duren and James Wiseman aren't mixing on a given night. I believe they can, but we would love to see what your thoughts are. Also, you made mention about it a little bit earlier in the episode that Monty Williams, when he was coaching the Phoenix Suns, there's a lot of correlation between that rotation that he had on the Suns to the now Pistons that he's coaching. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so when you look back at Monty's first season there, and you look at the roster and the breakdown, I'm just going to tell you the guys he played. He only played 11 guys, which, I mean, if you look back between that first year and the second year in which they made it all the way to the finals, he was still playing 11 guys. He plays a deep bench. That's his kind kind of like a coaching aspect. Is he plays a deep bench, which there's not a lot of coaches in the league that play a deep bench.
Nope.
Outside of Dwayne Casey, I mean, Dwayne played the deepest bench in the league last year because we sucked. But
look at teams like the Warriors, only play like 8-9 guys.
Exactly. So you look at his first year there, you have guys like Ricky Rubio, Devin Booker, Mikal Bridges, Dario Saric, and DeAndre Ayton starting. And then you have Kelly Oubre, Cam Johnson, Javon Carter, Aaron Baines, Frank Kaminsky, and Elie Okobo off the bench. You look at that, and you're going, well, that's pretty much the exact same lineup that they had the next season. It is. The difference is Ricky Rubio wasn't there. And that's kind of like going off of this past season for us. We had Killian Hayes playing point guard for us instead of Cade. Killian is a less version of Cade. And I'm not saying they're anywhere similar to the same player, but I'm just saying Killian is in that realm less of a point guard than Cade is in their ability standpoint. Like, he's a lesser player. And so when you look at the next season, Chris Paul facilitated that role. Obviously, Chris Paul is a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Oh, yeah.
And that's kind of like what we're going into this season is this past year was Killian Hayes, Ricky Rubio, but now we're upgrading a little bit and we're bringing Cade back into the mix, and that's Chris Paul for us. Because you look at their play, like Ricky Rubio, 13 points, 5 rebounds, 9 assists, shot 41% from the field, 36% from 3, and 86% at the line. I'm not complaining out of that from Ricky Rubio. I'm not complaining at all. Then you look at Chris Paul, he comes in 16.4 points a game, 4.5 rebounds a game, 9 assists, 50% from the field, 40% from 3, 93% at the line.
So efficient.
But that's the point that I'm trying to make here is there's similarities between Monty's first and second year and Monty's first year with us this season and prior to last season with Dwayne Casey. There is a lot of similarities. And you just look at the age of the groups. Like, in his first season, it's pretty similar to our current situation in the sense that Ricky Rubio, 29 years old, but then it fluctuates from 23, 22, like consistently through the rest of the lineup. But then you have guys like Aaron Baines, 33, Frank Kaminsky, 22, Dario Saric, 26. That's kind of like our situation right now with Monte Morris, Joe Harris, Bojan. And that's not a bad situation to be in. And Monty then takes that next step with the lineup, and these guys mature together, and you have a successful year. And so that's kind of what I think may happen this year for us.
Well, we see the Phoenix Suns kind of have this, like, not ideal power forward center position with Dario Saric and DeAndre Ayton, and then they upgrade it the next year with Jay Crowder and DeAndre Ayton. So we saw last year Isaiah Stewart, Jalen Duren kind of struggling with that dynamic here and there, and then Marvin Bagley at times when there was injuries, and then hopefully now upgrading to James Wiseman at the power forward position, we'll see our big man situation kind of upgrade and take it up a notch. Next thing I want to talk about is there's 2 guys in particular I think are going to be key role players if the team is going to be successful. If these guys don't show up and don't give their offensive prowess to the Pistons, it might be another rough season, but time will tell. I want to talk about Alec Burks and Monte Morris and how they're going to be a key to our success. Say that Bojan, Asar, whoever is at that small forward position, if it's Asar in particular, we know he's going to struggle at times offensively. Jaden Ivey isn't the most efficient player. He's a lot like a young Russell Westbrook. He's going to put up a lot of shots, hurt you in the paint, but on any given night, he could have an off game here or there. But if Alec Burks, Monte Morris are able to bring not just efficient play, but also just smart plays and kind of give the second rotation what they didn't have last year. I love Hamidou Diallo, but we know that, and he did take a step up last season, but we know that he doesn't always work well within an offense. Now having Monte Morris and Alec Burks alongside each other, I think the passing game is going to take that much of an upgrade. So if these 2 guys can come in, play efficient, hit that three ball when needed, and then hurt people in the passing game. The Pistons struggled so much last season in the assist column. The stats are not good for the Pistons passing game. If guys like Monte Morris, Alec Burks can work within an offense, I see success happening for the second rotation.
Yeah, and honestly, those two guys could be the third rotation, fourth rotation. It doesn't matter where you play them, they're always going to have success. And that's just in their DNA. That's who they are. When you look at the potential lineup of having those two guys along with Asar or just those three in general.
And Killian.
But those three in general, that's a freak of an athlete rotation right there with those three guys alone. And then you throw in guys like Killian Hayes, you throw in James Wiseman and Jalen Duren. Like imagine, I know they'd be starting, but just imagine a lineup in which you just have your athletes out there. And so you have like Jalen Duren, James Wiseman, Asar Thompson, Monte Morris, and Alec Burks. I'm not saying Cade isn't a freak of an athlete because he is. Jaden Ivey's a freak of an athlete too. But just a second rotation on if, like, let's say we did see Bagley and Stewart out there starting one night with Cade and the rest of the guys. A second unit of Jalen Duren, James Wiseman, Asar Thompson, Alec Burks, and Monte Morris, there is no complaints there. That second unit would be still better than the majority of the first units in the league alone. But I think the play in which Monte Morris has been such a great facilitator in his career, when you look at Washington this past year, his stats did drop down. They did. But you look at the situation there, they still have Bradley Beal. They had a weird, I don't even know how to say it because I don't want to be mean, but their lineup was terrible.
Yeah, it didn't mix well.
No, it didn't mix well. The guys were completely different players with each other, and it's like they threw a bunch of people together and was expecting something good to happen. That's what the Wizards were last year. And so you can understand how Monte Morris, not Marcus Morris. We did have him, but yeah, we can see how Monte and his stats dipped because you look at him in Denver with a bunch of guys that could actually play together who just won a championship. He fit in that role pretty darn well. Yeah. And he wasn't even the starting point guard. He started when Jamal Murray went out with injury, but prior to that, he was one of those second unit guys, and he still shined. He still could be out there with the starters and consistently be one of those top tier guys in the league. And that's what I expect him to be here in Detroit, is he's going to be one of those guys that needs to uplift the unit, but the unit is still going to be better with him, even if he doesn't have as strong of an impact per se. And then you look at even Alec Burks in that situation. When he came in for us, instant offense.
Yeah.
One of the highest IQs that we've had on our team in a long time. His three-point shot ability alone is impressive. And just the passes he'd make at the right time, and it's like, wait a minute. Okay, no offense to Killian, but Killian's not doing that, and he's a great passer. Cade's not doing that, and he's a great passer. Jaden Ivey's not doing that. His passing's getting better, but it's not there yet. But you have Monte Morris and you have Alec Burks making these passes that are going like, wait a minute. That opens up our whole offense and defense alone. So I think if they step up, and honestly, I'd throw Joe Harris into that mix, but those three in general, if they were to thrive together, our bench would be easily not only the deepest in the league, but one of the best.
To me, the question is, of can the Pistons lean on their depth to cover up their youth? I think it's an easy answer. I think it's an absolute yes. And we talked about a couple of weeks ago, I think about 3 weeks ago, the early NBA power rankings came out. ESPN put it out. And we were so upset seeing teams like the Pacers, Raptors, Houston Rockets ahead of us. And I think the main reason why is from the top of our roster to the bottom, we have one of the deepest benches in the league. And you look at our top guy in Cade Cunningham to one of our bottom guys in, say, Marcus Sasser. If Marcus Sasser is one of your bottom guys and he's the 26th pick in this year's draft, I mean, come on.
Yeah.
So for me, I think that's why, we get so fired up when, certain teams are ranked above us and why we even have to ask the question if the Pistons bench can hold up this team. It's always going to be yes, because Troy Weaver, and even Stan Van Gundy, when we had him, we're not the biggest Stan Van Gundy guys, but back in 2018, we didn't have that one superstar guy when we made the playoffs.
Yep.
We just had a deeper bench, and sometimes that can prove to have winning success. We just got to kind of keep waiting around and wait for these young guys to develop, and then our bench will come along with them. The next topic I want to talk about is question marks off the bench. Killian Hayes is one of the biggest. Isaiah Livers is a guy that, you know, is a Michigan native, but we're always kind of quick to you know, push him and hope that he takes that next step. And then Marcus Sasser's another question mark, just because, you know, a late first round pick, you just never know what's going to happen in that area of draft picks. As far as these guys, if just one of these guys exceeds our expectations coming off the bench, we could have a 37-game winning season. Out of those three names, Isaiah Livers, Killian Hayes, Marcus Sasser, who do you think is most likely to exceed our expectations?
Killian Hayes. And that's just because this is the perfect opportunity for him. He has no pressure at all. I mean, besides Pistons fans applying pressure, because everybody hates him apparently. But no, I think he's gonna be. It's a weird comparison, but it's a callback to the Suns roster, and I know I'm making too many callbacks with that. But he's kind of like a Cameron Payne. Nobody expected Cameron Payne to be something spectacular with the Suns. Nobody had any expectations on him. Everybody thought he was just going to be one of those bench players that never sees the floor. Killian Hayes, in our current roster, the way it's built, is kind of in that mold of, you don't know if he's actually going to get a crap ton of playing time, but he could. And like Monty absolutely loves guys like Cameron Payne, Javon Carter, and all those not more well-known guards that come in and just work. And I think if Killian can just focus on doing his thing night in and night out, he's going to exceed these expectations. Because, I mean, Weaver is not stupid. He's not. Like, if he really wanted to take Tyrese Halliburton or any of these other guys, he would have. He really would have. But he saw something in Killian that not a lot of people see in him, and he's still slowly getting into that mix. And he's only 22 years old still. Like, he's been in the league for a while now. Yeah, he has. But he's still one of those guys that he's kind of like, he has one of those Madden hidden talent traits. That's what Killian has. Is you're just trying to unlock it slowly or unlock it right away. Everybody's trying to unlock it right away right now. But some of those guys just need time to develop in order to make that jump. And I think this is the season in which Killian makes that jump, because prior to that, it was kind of like everybody was forcing him to make that jump. But now he gets to sit back, sees what the offense is going to do for him, sees what the defense is going to do for him. And I think he makes that jump. And honestly, outside of Killian, I think we could see a jump out of Isaiah Livers. Just because Isaiah Livers is kind of like a Cam Johnson-esque player too.
I do like the take of Killian Hayes making a breakout season. I think he's due it. I think he kind of has to. But I think with adding a guy like Monte Morris, I think I could see them at that 1-2 slots. And a guy like Monte is going to be able to help facilitate within this offense with Killian. We saw Killian a lot last year try to get the ball moving and get that ball rotation throughout the court with all five guys, getting all the rest of the four guys involved. But having this young team, you know, we can struggle with that at times. But if you add in Alec Burks, Monte Morris alongside of him, Joe Harris, I think that ball movement is going to come along, and I think that's where we're going to see Killian Hayes thrive. He's a guy that likes to move within the offense a lot, and if the ball is moving, that allows him to move and try to find his spots within the offense. I also like Marcus Sasser. I'm always going to come and defend this guy because after seeing what he did in Summer League when he was streaky with his shooting, staying with it and putting up those shots and then reaching the 41-point mark, I believe it was, in the last game of the Summer League. I like Marcus Sasser. I think he's going to surprise us. I think he's one of those guys in that late first round that there's always a couple of those guys in the draft that those late first round picks that just shocks the world and surprises everybody. I think Sasser could be that guy out of Houston. So keep an eye out on him. I think we're going to be seeing him a little bit in the G League, which is fine. We saw Saban Lee, Luka Garza years past really make a big impact in the G League and put up huge numbers. I think Marcus Sasser is going to be one of those guys that is going to be so undeniable in the G League. We're going to have to give him a little bit of time like we did with Jared Rhoden. Time will, of course, tell. But to quickly answer, to wrap up today's episode, are the Pistons going to be able to lean on their depth to cover up the youth? Ryan, what's your answer?
Yes.
I like that answer. I agree.
You only need one word, right?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's a quick answer because for me, our bench passes the eye test.
Yep.
We got the bigs, we got the small forwards, we got the point guards. We have the quality character players that you know are going to compete every day in the practice facility. It all starts with the effort in the practice facility. And if you start there, only greatness will develop within that. And our bench has that work ethic. And I love that. Mm-hmm. That will do it for today's episode number 44. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure to like and subscribe. And let us know what your thoughts are on all of our takes from today's episode. So make sure to comment below. We will see you guys in episode number 45. Peace.